that's on stage today. And I'm going to facilitate this session, which is on local food security. I have to say I've been talking non-stop since 10 o'clock and I can't really legislate what's going to come out with my mouth at this point in the day. But anyway, let's give it a go. So we've got three guests here on the panel. We have Zarah Copeland from Australian Ecosystems, but from a lot more, by the sounds of it. We've just been having a chat. Current thing, I think probably the thing she will want to talk about most is, what do you call it? You're calling it the Sky? Is that his name? The Melbourne Sky Farm, okay? Which is interesting in itself. Another example of an urban farm, very urban farm. Couldn't be more urban, I think. So we'll find out about that. Then we've got Nick Rose, who's the CEO of Sustain.org, and Sustain.org have, if you don't know, several urban farms, including the Oak Hill Food Justice Farm in Preston, and another one in Burundara, is that right? Bundura, that's right. And finally we've got Josh Collings, who's down from Country Bit, although he tells me he's from Queensland originally via Melbourne, and he is, I don't know what your title is, but you can tell us that, Josh, deeply involved in the setting up and running of Acres and Acres, which is a farm, but a food co-op in North East. But I'll let them talk about, I guess, their solutions or their contributions to food security. And maybe we'll talk about some of the challenges, and maybe we'll talk about what we can do as well at the end. So a few minutes each, and then we'll be discussion time, and I'll pass the mic around. So I'm going to hand to Zarah first, if that's all right with you. Good to go? All right.
Thanks so much, Peter. I love your So my name's Zarah Copeland. I'm an engineering horticulturalist, and just like everyone, I think about food instantly. So when we talk about food security, the first thing that kind of comes to mind for me is when you're standing at the checkout at the big supermarkets, and you're faced with these really sort of expensive and over-invested AI security systems and these gates that just kind of make it feel like they're there to keep their hands deeper in your pocket. And people are feeling like pretty much everyone will be feeling this: do I want a house, or do I want this avocado? Can I afford this bread? What can I take out of my basket? So that's what we're talking about when we talk about food insecurity. So last year, 3.4 million Australian households, that's 35% of Australian households, face food insecurity. 2 million of those face severe food security. So it's not just like a low socioeconomic issue, it's something that we're all facing. So when you think about it, food really sits at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So a lot of people agree with that, but basically it's a triangle. At the bottom, you've got your physiological needs, so you need food, you need shelter, sleep, water. But at the top of the pyramid, you've got your purpose, self-actualization, everything that you need to really achieve your higher purpose. So when we're looking at the kind of problem, the biggest problem that we're facing in this generation, climate change. So how are we supposed to think about some of the biggest, greatest engineering and social problems of climate change if you're thinking, can I afford this $11 bag of cheese? So another thing is, when you think about it, climate change and our food systems are quite interconnected. The food that we eat, cows, animals, and dairy, these are all producing methane, CO2, all this sort of thing. In the reverse, the fruits and vegetables we eat also suppress growth. Now, I'm not suggesting that we all go out and eat strict vegans and everything, but about 25% of the population at the moment is vegetarian, and those meats, Mondays, and things like that actually do have a really big impact on carbon emissions. So what do we do? We can look back in history and say, well, you know, times have been tough before, they'll be tough again. What did people do in the past? So we take a little step back in history and think about it. One of the things that we used to do was have victory gardens. So you would have a veggie patch in your garden, so would your neighbour. Maybe I grow lemons and grow tomatoes, and we'll get together and have a cider and then each other will be drunk. But with our, you know, urban sprawl, increasing cascades, all of that sort of thing, a lot of people don't even have access to a patch of dirt or anything. It's almost unfathomable that you can take up space in the not the digital realm to set aside a few square meters to grow a cucumber. So what do? Urban farms, we turn grey to green. We turn the concrete jungle into an urban farm. We can have thriving urban farms that create produce, create community, and you can be even better at training your neighbours. So we've got a great example here of how that could happen. It's just a testament of what you do when given a few resources. So one of the projects I'm working on, as mentioned earlier, is Melbourne Sky Farm. So working through a lot of collaborations with the City of Melbourne, the Melbourne Convention Centre, Food Cube, Australian Ecosystems, few companies that work together, and we're looking to those grey spaces, those tops of car parks, underutilized spaces, and we're creating these urban farms. So Sky Farm is one of those. So it's a 2,000 square metre car park in Docklands. It's a top 2 split deck roof levels, and we're converting that into a green oasis. So all the food that's grown next to Oswald is food perhaps where it's needed most. And if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to disappoint you, it's not open. But I'm working really hard to get it open. Why is it open? It's in there. People are scared. Anyone who has the say in the project and wants to say no is kind of doing that, and all of their logic is completely flawed. Let's stop hearing that and let's start saying how can we do that. So that's a bit of a pattern of mine, so that's all happening. So I really like to think if we take it over, let's rock on top. But urban farming isn't enough. Which is something to do with chatting about. Urban farming isn't enough. So if we really truly want to make a dent, and with food security and climate, we need to look broader. We need to look at our food security system and how we eat. So if we truly want to free up a lot of the land that's being used for inefficient purposes, agriculture and things like that, we want to free up those spaces at the rate that we're currently, we actually want to exceed the rate that we're currently deforesting and turn those areas back into nature repair and revegetate those areas. So that means we need to look at some smart technologies. So another area of interest of mine is alternative protein sources. So if we start to just look at some cutting edge technology. Okay, quick. So one more technology that's happening at the moment is precision fermentation. So we're looking at using microsoftware. We as a very scientific community, very scientific community is looking at precision fermentation. So we can take our traditional agricultural system and a new way of doing this. So for example, there's about six proteins in dairy that can now synthesize 3 of them that are genetically the same, but it doesn't come from an animal. So this is using the fermentation process of microbes. So we need to look at, so they can do this with a fraction of the land, a fraction of the energy, and a fraction of the water. So then we can free up farming land for nature repair and revegetation. So we need to look at sort of different complexities, layer of regenerative agriculture, new technologies to feed growing population.
Afternoon, everyone. Nick Rose, I'm the co-founder and executive director of Footscray, the Australian Food Network. That is a national healthy and sustainable food systems organisation and social enterprise. We've been around about 10 years. I've got a long-standing interest in this area, going back to networks in Australia and globally. So my research was looking at Via Campesina, which means the farmer's path or the farmer's way in Spanish. That's a global network of about 200 million small-scale farmers and indigenous peoples right around the world. Really came out of conversations from farmers in Latin America and Europe, North America, Canada, Africa, Asia, talking together and understanding that they shared certain challenges and issues and needed to work together as a global collective to turn around the food system, which they saw was really going down quite a destructive and negative path, as it was dominated by powerful corporations. And I think that's a theme that I would like to mention in this whole area when we're talking about food security, food systems, because the reason why, some of the points that Zarah touched on, and I will mention a couple as well, as to why the food system is going in the wrong direction, is because of what its priorities are, what its goals are, right? When you think about the food system or food security, its purpose should really be to satisfy a basic need, which I mentioned, which is eating, right? We all have to eat. It's probably the third most basic need for humans after breathing and water. We all have to eat. That should be the priority of the food system. It should be about keeping us all healthy and well as humans, and also looking after about our non-human species with whom we inhabit this planet, looking after the waterways, looking after the soil, looking after ecosystems. That should be the priority of the food system. It isn't. The priority of the food system is money. Right? It is profit for a small number of very powerful corporations at any point across the food system, whether we're talking about seeds, whether we're talking about chemicals, about agricultural inputs, about retail. In this country, Australia, the two most powerful actors in the food system, you will know them well, and many of them you probably visit, or maybe you don't, maybe you do. I'm talking about Collings and Woolworths, of course, the supermarket duopoly, right? They control 70 to 75% of the food system, the food market, the retail market in Australia. What does that mean? It means they squeeze farmers on prices. There's a saying called get big or get out, the cost price squeeze. Farmers that I've talked to, many say they have not seen a price increase in real terms for 30 or 40 or even 50 years, some of them. Werribee South Market Gardens, everybody heard of Werribee South Market Gardens? You know what that is? It's sort of out west. Talking about food security for Melbourne, it's really, really important. 3,000 acres produces a very significant part of Victoria's vegetables. If you're interested in this, there's a website called Foodprint Melbourne. Researchers at Melbourne University have been mapping this and looking at what it takes to feed a city like Melbourne. It's a really interesting and important resource. We've got some very productive areas of land around Melbourne. Werribee is one, out east, southeast, Cardinia, Kirrirup, Casey, others, Yarra Ranges. These are Range Peninsula. Very important parts of feeding the city. We need to look after these areas, but those farmers, if they're in the supermarket system, are being very much squeezed on price. And then, of course, we've seen over the last 18 months how the supermarkets are in the news because many consumers, in the cost of living crisis and the spike in food insecurity that Zarah mentioned, feel they're being ripped off. Right? They're talking about price gouging and profiteering by the supermarkets. The supermarkets are making record profits while people are struggling to actually put food on the table. So that's why there are federal inquiries in the Senate and the ACCC right now looking at these issues. So that is one really important, when we're talking about food security, local food security, it's a really important factor to bear in mind. Another one is protecting farmland, right? If we can't look after our farmland, we're not going to have a future food system for this city or for this state. That's why there was an inquiry in the Victorian Parliament and the Environmental Planning Committee last year called Securing Victoria's Food Supply. Right? You can look at it at the Victorian Parliament website, an important inquiry. They reported in November last year calling for long-term protection of our farmland, the sorts of things that have been done in Canada, around Toronto, with the Greenbelt of Toronto, with the agricultural land reserve around Vancouver, long-term permanent protection of our best soils and access to water and access to markets and population. These are the kinds of things that we need to be thinking about and doing. So I'm going to switch, because I have a habit of just kind of like going a long rave about these things. How much time have I got left? 1 minute. Right. Adaptation, I just want to say a bit about my organisation, what we're doing locally. We are running urban farms in the city of Darabin, in Alphington, Preston and Bundoora Park. In terms of adaptation, we've taken an abandoned site belonging to the Anglican Church, actually, St Mary's in Preston, It was a church going back to 1860, stolen land from the Orangery, gifted land to the Anglican Church. The first church was built with crowdfunding. That land was empty for 10 years, and then we took it on to turn the vicarage out the back into a food justice farm where we've grown over 1.5 tonnes of food and donated that to local food relief. We think that there should be places like that in every suburb and every neighbourhood around the city. Right? That is our vision for local food security. That's adaptation, and that's what we're saying to local government, state government. We're talking to the federal parties in the run for the election. We're running a Vote for Food campaign to make food security a really important priority. There was a national food security inquiry in the federal parliament in 2023. It's called Australian Food Story, Feeding the Nation and Beyond. It called for a national food strategy, a Minister for Food, an Australian Food Council, and resourcing and support for local and state government and communities to work together to address these issues. Right? So it's a big reform agenda that's in front of us. Big challenges that we're facing, but I have every confidence that we can get through it because we're going to hear from Josh. There are fantastic people and groups and organisations around the state who are doing exactly that. Thanks.
And just to add on, I guess you could say regional, so we have the same problems. Like, we have all this land where we don't have access to any of it. There's crown land everywhere that there's cows on walking around for free for the farm next door. We can't access that to grow vegetables on or teach new farmers. New farmers can't afford to buy land. There's a possibility of a first generation farmer on a big scale. Corporate industries are buying up the farmland, or it's generational, doing the same thing that's been done forever. So to get new ideas and grow, the new farmers are all on these little blocks. Even in regional towns are on little blocks, and pension budgets and find out how to do this, and so that's how Acres and Acres kind of form came to life from disaster. I lost my house in the fires, and then we had COVID within a month, 2 months afterwards. And we had no food. There was no food, fresh food during the fires. So we came together out with the food swap group, and we activated hardcore on this tiny little block. And then within 6 months, we had 3 urban farms in a rural setting going hardcore, intensive farming. But then what we had is so many problems. We had no soil, we had no farming outlet, agricultural thing for growing vegetables. We had all these backyard growers with skills and YouTube and market gardener, lessons or whatever, and that's where we learn everything from. We learn online. We started this tiny little farm. Pubs gave us land, and then we needed tools because we got a little bit bigger, so we got a tool library. And we got funding for that. Our tool library is quite incredible. It's about $350,000 worth of tractors, tip trucks, planting machines, and it's highly underutilised. It does supply maybe 6 little bigger market garden farms, but it could be so much more. We just don't have a growing community. We've got a cow community, we don't have a growing vegetable community in our area. We need 10, 15 years for that change to settle in, So, we've got library, we've got a little farm, we've got from that we need soils, and we started seeing these guys talk about closed loop systems, because we didn't have any, we were just doing it and then figuring out that shit, this is already been done. So if we go into a little bit more, we just got to grab systems and chunk them on to what we were doing. We've got a shop now, because the green grocery is going to close down, all with partnerships with Vic Health and funding and so forth. And that's probably been our biggest failing, is to go into a bricks and mortar model. It's had great connection within the community, huge amounts of customers, but we've lost some of the things of why we started, and that we're in a phase changing. How do we do this better? What do we do? Is it worth it? Should we hand this over to someone else? All these things. But our base is amazing. We've got a whole system that's underutilised, that's way too big for our town, and so we work within our larger system, the Northeast, now for, well, since we started, but really getting into there. And one thing that was identified through food hub systems that work with Big Health was that transport. Like, how do you get small scale stuff around? Like, it's not going to last, there's no cool room access and so forth. So we're just about to launch a cool room vehicle that's going to be accessible to the northeast, is what we're trying for. We've got all these assets, but we've got nowhere to drive it, but we're going to have funding for people to run it. And although we are making money through our shopping stuff, it's not enough for the size of our project that we're currently at. So we're on the top of the spread, and we're running out of and energy, and and that drive forward. So it's a tricky time because everyone's like, oh, it's a great idea, we want to be appointed, but it's like we need 10 years of support to really be able to duplicate our model or continue enjoying the people. Because you only just start, your head's in there, you're so busy, and you're just doing 70 hours a week, and then you look up and you're like, oh, there's some other people we can join with to help lighten this load. So it takes a while and time to be able to connect with this sort of stuff. So yeah, it's the energy levels are really acres and acres of full on, and it's a tiny town. We're talking like 1,900 people, and we've got this. What's that? Collings is our farming town, and there's like 9 little suburban towns around it, like a tiny little satellite town. And so the idea originally was market gardens in every little town after the fire, so everyone had food, their own food resilience. So that didn't work because we don't have that kind of people engaged in growing food. So, and there's so many, I'm talking about the challenges of this to 1,000 ways. There's so many challenges in small scale farming, and it's super important, there's so many benefits to it, but it doesn't balance out financially. So everything that it talks about is just like, yeah, that's our experience, and it's driving you wild because it's actually their vital solutions, they just don't take the money box. I don't know, it's been an awesome experience and journey, and energy levels of, a group that's small is, a team, all powered by volunteers at the start, went into a paid model where everyone's getting paid, probably worse than volunteer. Now the output we get with volunteers, and everyone volunteering was phenomenal, and then you've got structure, and then you've got and both hard work, but to be able to balance those two things is the model that we're trying to do. Anyway, I think it goes.
A great mixture of experiences there. I think a few, one of the things that kind of occurred to me while we were talking actually, has been, and I've been thinking about, is sort of scaling these things. And are we talking about, when we're talking about urban farms, are we talking about, well, we're talking about maximising production probably, but we're also probably want to diffuse the skills through the community. And so there's an educational part of it as well, and we were very clear from the start with this garden here that it was going to be a community garden and a learning place.
I've got a little bit of info to share. It's sort of in the works, so don't get on go kind of like publicising it just yet because it's not official. Not official. I don't know. Anyway, what it is over from Perth. So we've got a couple of members over in WA and South Perth that have been doing great work in their community garden, like a place like this, using it as an urban agriculture, they call it an urban agriculture education program. Anyway, they've been plugging away for a few years, and then an interesting conversation happened just in the last week where somebody from the Royal Agricultural Society of Western Australia. So, has anyone been to the Royal Shows? Has anyone remember the Royal Shows where you go onto the rides with your show bags? Show bags. So, yeah, it resonated with me because I grew up in Perth and I always went to the Perth show with my show bags and saw cows and all that. Anyway, apparently, this is interesting, there's been a shift in the leadership in the agricultural society where the old timers and more traditional people, let's say, have sort of like, gently moved on. and a new brigade to come in, younger people with new ideas, new energy, and they want to focus on urban agriculture, interestingly enough. And they've got a big site in Claremont, in Perth. You know from Perth or know about Perth? Do you want to be Perth? Anyway, they're all shows that conducted on showgrounds. Like it's a big site. Anyway, their idea is a $150 million project over 5 years, working with the State Department of Agriculture, the State Department of Education. Have a permanent big community urban farm right in central Perth as an education centre, but link it to curriculum to actually get a agriculture and food curriculum right through primary and secondary school across all the public school system in Western Australia, which is not being done. So that's the sort of thing where I think you can really start scaling up and making a significant difference. Because for me, in terms of like systems change and levers of change, like I talked about the supermarkets, but another one is culture, right? What we take for granted and common sense. So when I did my research and PhD, I talked about food sovereignty as a counter-hegemonic movement, which just really means changing the dominant structure and system. And one of the things that holds it in place is what we take for granted. Like what is the common sense at any one particular point in time? And the common sense of the food system is the human population is growing, therefore we need to produce more food, then we need to have more production, it's more and more and more, right? So growth, degrowth out there that you've probably seen. No, I think the argument of the food sovereignty movement is that smaller scale growers are actually the ones that are feeding the world. It's not about more, it's about doing things better, doing things sustainably, doing things fairly. And that's where I think the agricultural people over in WA are thinking. And in terms of health and food, what I was going to mention is that 40% of the Australian diet is now ultra-processed food. That's why we have such a spike in cancer, in diabetes, in strokes, and all these chronic diseases all linked to diet. That industry has just expanded massively across our suburbs. There's fast food everywhere. It's advertised everywhere. It's discounted everywhere. We need to change that up. So more places like this is going to want to change what's normal, particularly for our youth, for our young people. Seeing vegetables, having vegetables in schools, learning about where food comes from, that is the that's cultural change. That's what we need to do. Sorry, I don't know.
No, that's good one. All right, questions?
Hi, Amy from the local food connections show 3CR Sustain on the whole bunch of stuff. I just wanted to add to your point that Food Melbourne I think said that we produce enough food to feed 60 million people a year or something like that, or
the stats are that Australia is a net exporter of agricultural commodities. Yes, that is true.
Yeah.
But we've got, as Zarah said, 30%, 40% of food poverty and food security. Right?
No. I'm saying that there's a lot of food going to waste.
Yes.
Okay. And that diverse as a really awesome group for the Fruit Squad, who are proving what you're talking about right now.
Yeah, we turn out our food diverse.
But my question is, in urban spaces, do you have any knowledge to share about navigating harmful heavy metals and stuff in the soil? There's a couple of waste incinerators being proposed at the moment, which are being canned in Europe because they've made food in local areas inedible, backyard chicks' eggs full of toxic chemicals. Do you have any advice when it comes to some of the fertile areas next to cocoa that couldn't grow in the soil because the lead was through the roof?
Put a solution on it, where we've got damaged soil, we've got polluted soils, and we can't ameliorate them easy, or whatever is the budget, or is feasible, we can't use background soil, or it's just too clayey, or something like that, grow up. Food beds are really great, really accessible, you can control your soil quality a lot better than you can in ground. If you get viruses or something in your soil instead of being like, all that stuff, you can categorize it a bit. And with the way the horticultural science of plants goes, they're generally only taking up about 250 mil of soil anyway. So really, if you think sort of A and B horizons in soil, we're really using that top layer. So the leaching beds
on top of what everybody's been saying, I'm wondering if it's worth the discussion of, so we're thinking about the dollar, which is just so lacking to do what you want to do. To get the message out that when people, the general population, might pay 25% or extra for this fresh and nutrient-rich food, that the message be that they don't need to go and reach for the vitamin and mineral tablets that, of course, the duopolies want us to go and buy as well. And with some scientific evidence that there is so much more nutrition in organically grown or well-grown vegetables and fruits that have microorganisms in the soil. So microorganisms, I think I wanted to hear about. What are you reading about? I heard about precision fermentation. I think that's a microorganism, but even where we look at how we get manure from in order to increase the fertility of soils.
So one of the kind of things that they're saying is that it takes, in order to get the same amount of nutrition from an orange that you got 20 years ago, you need to eat 10 oranges. So our current agricultural system in commercial quantities has put so much stress on the farmer that their highest KPIs are crop and pest resistance, and nutrition has often suffered as a result. Because how devastating to a farmer if they've got a whole field of broccoli and clubroot destroys the whole thing. So it's been yield and crop resistance we have lost into the nutrition. So you want to get kind of growing in very small quantities and control your soil and control your nutrition factors over your crop factors of yield and pest resistance. You can increase the nutrient density. It's just yes.
I guess in our experience of farming to shop and so forth, that change conversation and talking about how to get people to even want it, it's more than the price. Like our price of our high density, nutritious, regenerative growing food is cheaper than IGA food next door, and the convenience of walking in to get your beer and all the other products in the 12 other lanes is far outweighs the idea of nutrient-dense food for, like, it takes a long time, and we can see the changes, people walking in. To me, it's all about flavour, taste, like that's the gateway to that situation in our community, and the price is got to be at the same price for us to even be able to have that conversation when we're not even have a shop. So it's a long conversation, I reckon, to get that change.
One of the things that we're called for is 500 billion investment in sustainable food systems, edible gardens, community gardens, and we've said that to the federal government as an investment in health prevention. This country massively underspends on preventative health. We spend dealing with mental ill health and chronic disease upwards of $200 billion every single year. Right? So we are underspending, and we have done for years, on prevention, actually keeping us healthy. $500 million is what we spend every day on people being sick, right? Just treating them in their healthcare system. So, for God's sake, why don't we invest in things like this, like where we are now, and keep people healthy? And if we did that, we could actually pay people like Josh to grow food and make it available, very cheaply or even freely, as a public health intervention, almost like a procurement system that's a public health investment in sustainable farming, in organic agriculture, to keep people healthy, to keep people on the land, and to build local economies.
It's one of the best messages for action on climate change.
Yeah. There was a question. There's a question.
Hello.
food security issue, one way that people are looking at housing security issues is to look at the tens of thousands of properties that are empty across the state, creating lists, including creating squatters lists, essentially, you see that is growing as housing security increases. So I was wondering, do you know of any movements to take these lists of empty properties which probably have terrible grassy lawns which just eat up water, and to make that as guerrilla gardens, essentially squatters' gardens, and to what extent would that be a viable way to approach?
Well, when it sounds good in theory to have a guerrilla garden, just go in and like take over these vacant lots and like, I would support that. The problem is, because we are a private property system, you're probably going to get the owners noticing that, before too long, coming and kick you out or even charge you for trespassing. So I would just represent another caution on that. I think perhaps to do it in the way we recommended it, as a sustainable and supportive way, would be to actually get it resourced. And there is a way to do that. There's actually something the state government here introduced a couple of years ago called a vacant residential land tax levy that actually charges landowners who are holding on to vacant land and not making it develop or not developing it. So that's already there. They're paying double or treble the land tax they would otherwise pay. That's there. So what I would like to say to local councils is, why don't you incentivise a landowner who's sitting on a patch of empty land and just growing weeds and concrete, which frustrates the hell out of me, give them a discount on their land tax if they would make it available to a community group, pay for some wicking beds or some above ground infrastructure, bring it in, get them set up, and have it as like a mobile, transportable infrastructure where you can do like move it around, and as places develop, then you can just move it off to the next place, or the whole. But that is an opportunity, it seems to me, but it needs some coordination and some investment. But I think it's a great opportunity, and
so there is an organisation that already does that. So exactly what you're talking about. I've been around my brain what's called. They're an organisation and they do above ground moving beds, and basically they'll go into a lot of land that's been subdivided, but it's just sitting there empty. Often, like I've worked in construction for years, often you will be waiting months and months, even years to get your DAs, to get your approvals, to get your designs done, and these blocks are sitting there empty. There is an organisation that does go around and move urban farms for these. Sorry?
3,000 acres aren't so active now. They were doing that, but they're not doing as much. There's one.
So we could move the same farm around and have a resource in certain way.
I'll get you to go back on your brains and you send me the name of the organisation, and we'll get it through to the organisation. Yeah. I've got. It's a really short question. It's a yes, no answer. So, yeah.
What you do is they should make a plan for property developers.
Yes, absolutely.
And then in the bonus, they can report about that and their sustainability outcomes anyway. Everybody loves to report on their sustainability outcomes. So.
Yes, no question. All right, I'm quick. I was curious as to the Western Australian initiative that had with them. So
Royal Australian Society, Royal Agriculture Society of Western Australia. Yeah, so they're near Victoria equivalent, but they're probably run Royal.
Is that going to be connected to ag colleges that already exist in that way? Is that going to be?
Look, I just literally my members over at Perth just told me about it. The ag people over in Europe are doing the scoping study at the moment to check out where it's actually happening. But they're serious, so they've kind of started to cost it out.
all right, to wrap time.
Yeah, unfortunately we have to start packing up this room, but thank you so much for the speakers.